As you enjoyed today's show, please like, share, subscribe. Right here. There's Greene on the other side. Yeah. Today's episode is affirmative action really necessary in society today? Of course, I don't got the title says society. But today I'm going to go over the history of affirmative action. And also, I will be going over previous court cases that relate to affirmative action that went to the Supreme Court. And also going to be going over recent cases in regards to the university case when it comes to affirmative action. And I will be talking about some critiques after the ruling of the affirmative action. Then I'm going to be talking about the affirmative action when it comes to Charlie Kirk as well, and his take on it. And let's get after it. So the importance of affirmative action since the 1960s to eliminate discrimination and segregation, which played a role at both the federal and state level of government in the United States. LGBTQ community. At the federal and state level of government, affirmative action either got disputed or abolished at the Supreme Court. Here I'm about to talk about the history of affirmative action. Of course, I already covered that already. So, former U.S. President John F. Kennedy issued Executive Order 10925, which says, take affirmative action to ensure that applicants are employed and that employees are treated during employment without regard to their race, creed, color, or national origin. So, about to dive deep into here about the affirmative action. Former U.S. President and Vice President Lyndon B. Johnson and former Special Legal Counsel, Executive Vice Chair of President Committee on Equal Employment Opportunities, Hobart Taylor Jr., which I'm going to show right now. Those are the two that created the Equal Employment Opportunity organization within the executive branch of the U.S. government. The term affirmative action originated from Hobart Taylor Jr. Gave federal contracting organization permission to enforce procedures to encounter federal contractor violations when it comes to their EEO commitments. Now I'm about to dive into the Civil Rights Act. After the assassination of John F. Kennedy, former U.S. President Lyndon Johnson signed a series of civil rights legislation bills in 1964, which discontinued segregation in all public accommodation and abolished employment discrimination when it comes to color, race, religion, sex, and national origin. Now I'm about to show you about the protests that occurred with the voting rights, what was on the way in Saline, Alabama, which called Bloody Sunday. Check this out. Yeah, just give me a second here. Just getting things together here. About to play this thing out right now.
Dr. King, how are things shaping up now for tomorrow?
Things are shaping up beautifully. We have people coming in from all over the country. I suspect that we will have representatives from almost every state in the Union, and naturally a large number of people from the state of Alabama. And we hope to see, and we plan to see, the greatest witness for freedom ever taken place, that has ever taken place on the steps of the capital of any state in the South. And this whole march adds drama to this total thrust. Last Sunday, more than 8,000 of us started on a mighty walk from Selma, Alabama. They told us we wouldn't get here. There were those who said that we would get here only over their dead bodies. Well, talk. Yes. All the world today knows that we are here and we are standing before the forces of power in the state of Alabama saying we ain't gonna let nobody turn us around. Today I want to tell the city of Selma.
Tell them, Doctor.
Today I want to say to the state of Alabama.
Yes, sir.
Like an idea whose time has come.
Yes, sir.
Not even the marching of mighty armies can halt us.
Yes, sir.
We are moving to the land of freedom.
Yes, sir.
I know you're asking today, how long will it take? Somebody's asking, how long will prejudice blind the visions of men? I come to say to you this afternoon, however difficult the moment,
Yes, sir.
however frustrating the hour, it will not be long.
I definitely feel your pain, Martin Luther King. You know, you came before me. I respect that, though. That takes courage. The fight was, the land of the free fight was right. Let's continue.
Because truth crushed earth will rise again.
Yes, sir.
How long? Not long.
Yes, sir.
Because no lie can live forever.
Yes, sir.
How long? Not long.
That's right.
Because you shall reap what you sow.
Yes, sir.
How long? Not long.
How long?
Truth forever on the scaffold, wrong forever on the throne.
Yes, sir.
Yet that scaffold sways the future.
Yes.
Behind the dim unknown standeth God within the shadow, keeping watch above his own. How long? Not long.
Yeah, that's right.
Because the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice.
Yes, sir.
How long? Not long.
Not long.
Because mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
Yes, sir.
He's trampling out the vintage where the grapes of wrath are stored.
Yes, sir.
He's loosed the fateful lightning of his terrible swift sword.
Yes, sir.
His truth is marching on.
Yes, sir.
He has sounded forth the trumpet that shall never call retreat. He is sifting out the hearts of men before his judgment seat.
Yes.
Oh, be swift, my soul, to answer him. Be jubilant, my feet.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Our God is marching on. Glory, hallelujah.
Yes, sir.
Glory, hallelujah. Glory, hallelujah. Glory, hallelujah. His truth is marching on.
Well, that's it for that. Yep, just hang tight. Just give me a second. Yep, just hang in there. Hang in there tonight. And I really felt that speech. That gave me the chills right there. So before the passage of the Voting Rights Act, both the local and the state level of government prohibit African Americans from utilizing their 15-minute rights under the U.S. Constitution. The 15th Amendment clearly states, the right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state or account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. Blacks were subject to literacy tests before they could vote. Also, election officials will often tell black people that their application is inaccurate. Finally, Lyndon Johnson passed the Voting Rights Bill on August 6, 1965, which query we're going to see right now. Actually, not yet, though. That's gonna come up next, though. Hit the wrong button, my bad. Then before the Voting Rights Act got passed, on July 2nd, 1965, the U.S. government has passed the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. They got that formed by President Lyndon Johnson through Executive Order 11246. Title VII banned race, religion, national origins, gender, sex discrimination, and federal contractors and subcontractor employers when it comes to hiring, firing, training, and recruiting of workers. The EEOC has the right to investigate all illegal discrimination against employers on the workers' behalf. When it comes to firing, when it comes to hiring, promotion, harassment, training, and wages and benefits. Welcome to more. Also, the EEOC has the right to file discrimination suits against employers on the workers' behalf as well. In 1966, the EEOC required that all large companies and government contractors should reveal the number of minorities and women employed within their company. Lyndon Johnson, in addition, used the federal funding on the Department of Education to accommodate with school desegregation. Now I'm about to get ready to pull up the whole Fair Housing Act. I sounded whistle too early. Boop, 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 boop. So, before the passage of Fair Housing Act, an alarming number of minorities who fought and died during Vietnam War, their families have a tough time leasing and buying houses in certain neighborhoods due to their race or national origin. After the civil rights leader Martin Luther King got killed, Lyndon Johnson passed the Fair Housing Act on April 11, 1968. The bill itself would ban discrimination regarding the sale, rent, and finance of housing based on race, religion, national origin, and sex. Lyndon B. Johnson also passed the Title IX, which banned discrimination against people with disability, plus banned discrimination against elderly and women in collegiate sports. So, MBE certification, which was passed by former U.S. President Richard Nixon, The Minority Business Enterprise program came in existence in 1971. The program itself assists businesses that own and personnel by members of minority groups. Also, the MBE program applied to women-owned businesses as well. Also, Richard Nixon signed a bill called the Rehabilitation Act in 1973. Federal agencies must enforce affirmative action plan for employing and promoting people with disabilities. The Philadelphia Plan of 1967 through 1970. Conservative politicians and trade unions did not like the affirmative action program that was set forth, which they're going to get that taken care of back in the 1950s, which was by Eisenhower. Obviously, Kennedy couldn't do it because he got assassinated. Johnson couldn't do it because he had a lot else going on. Actually, he actually did set the bill. I'm sorry, I sounded whistle there for that. But it became Nixon's agenda to get rid of it. The plan mandated that construction trade unions must hire non-whites for each federal construction project. Former U.S. President Nixon and other members of Congress thought the hiring practice on quota was illegal, according to the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Racial integration was a success in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Construction unions did give up power over the hiring process to job site supervisor. As white construction workers were protesting the plan itself, Nixon immediately dismissed the plan by hiring Peter Brandon as Secretary of Labor in 1970. Finally, construction and trade unions were able to be selective integration hiring practices. Greetings of University of California, David versus Bakke, Supreme Court case back in 1978. Alan Bakke happened to be a Caucasian male who got turned down twice after seeking enrollment at University of California, David Medical School due to racial quota system, which allowed minorities undergrads with poor grades and poor test scores to enroll at the university. The United States Supreme Court judge thought the racial quota system were illegal according to the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which is known as Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. Ruled in favor of Bakke. University of California, David preserved 16 out of 100 spots strictly for minority candidates. In other words, future students. Therefore, the Supreme Court judge declared that Bakke should be accepted at University of California, David Medical School. But the U.S. Supreme Court Justice in 1978 did say it was legal to use race as part of the enrollment process in higher education. Ruled in favor of University of California, David. United Steelworkers of America versus Weber in 1978. Not 78, 79. Sorry. Brian Weber happened to be a Caucasian male who thought he should have been picked for a craft work training position due to his seniority, but instead the craft work training position was filled by black employers with less seniority at Kaiser Metal and Chemical Corporation. Trying to take a breath here. He decided to take both the USWA and Kaiser to court for discrimination against white employees. Wetter had won the case against USWA and Kaiser at both the district and circuit courts. But Wetter ended up losing his case at the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court thought the USWA and Kaiser hiring practice did not violate the Title VII of the Civil Rights Act because they were seeking more minorities in the workplace. According to the barter agreement that was set forth by United Steelworkers of America and Kaiser Metal and Chemical Corporation promised to fill 50% of craft worker trainees with black applicants until the company itself met the Title VII affirmative action requirements. Goddard versus Bolger in 2003. Barb Goddard happened to be a Caucasian female who got turned down admissions at University of Michigan Law School with a 3.8 GPA and 161 LSAT score. She decided to file a lawsuit against now then president of the University of Michigan, Lee Bollinger. Goddard felt her admissions failed because due to her race. Goddard ended up losing her case at the U.S. Supreme Court. The U.S. Supreme Court said the University of Michigan Law School was in the right considering race as part of the enrollment process. Therefore, Goddard's 14th Amendment rights weren't ignored, and the racial quota system did not exist. Gratz versus Bollinger in 2023. Not 23, I'm sorry. 2003. Jennifer Gratz and Patrick Hamarch both have to be Caucasian who got turned down admissions at University of Michigan College of Literature, Science, and Arts from the year of 1994 and 1997. Both Gratz and Hamarch met the criteria that was set forth by the University Office of Undergrad Admissions. I gotta take a deep breath here. The University Office of Undergrad Admissions make their decision on applicants based on high school scores, standardized test scores, high school quality, curriculum strength, geography, alum relationships, leadership, and race. Therefore, both Garrett and Archer filed a class action lawsuit against the now university president of Michigan, Lee Bollinger, in 1997. The University of Michigan was using a point system out of 100 to grade applicants who applied for enrollment at the university. The institution did view African Americans, Hispanics, and Native Americans as underrepresented minorities. Only minority applicants got 20 points out of 100 required to gain admissions at the university. The U.S. Supreme Court ruled in favor of Gratz and Hamarcher. University of Michigan did violate the 14th Amendment Equal Protection Clause by using a point awarded system for minority applicants who are seeking enrollment at the university. So now, about to go to the next segment. The state of Michigan, Nebraska, and Arizona banned affirmative action. So Michigan banned their affirmative action back in 2007, which prohibits so-called special privileges of minorities when it comes to college admissions, employment, education, and contracting. And this case also went to Supreme Court back in 2014. So the state of Michigan ended up prevailing, which defeated a coalition to defeat affirmative action. The Supreme Court should rule in favor of Michigan to have the ban on affirmative action legal, which was legal because basically the own state got their own government. In an opinion piece, former Supreme Court Justice Anthony Kennedy said the case itself was not just about constitutionality or the merits or racist consciousness, admissions policies, and higher education, but it's about rather in what matters voters in the state may choose to prohibit the consideration of racial preference in governmental decision, and in particular with the respect to college admissions. So Nebraska pretty much followed suit back in 2008. I ain't even go over that though. Pretty much banned privilege of race, sex, color, ethnicity, and national origins in public establishments, which was a measure was under 424. Under Proposition 107, which was Arizona, which decided to ban special privileges when it comes to race, sex, color, ethnicity, and national origins in public establishments back in 2010. Now I'm about to get into the college decision when it comes to affirmative action back in 2023. Students from fair admissions from versus Harvard and University of North Carolina back in 2023. Conservative activist Edward Blum, president of Students for Fair Admissions, thought both Harvard and University of North Carolina were treated Asian Americans and white Americans unfair to race conscious admissions. Asian American applicants got victimized for having better SAT scores than any other ethnic group who applied for admissions at University of Harvard. The U.S. Supreme Court ruled in favor of student fair admissions, permanently and racist consciousness admissions at colleges and institutions throughout the country. Of course, some colleges do their own thing, though. They're not really following the Supreme Court like that. The Supreme Court thought race consciousness admissions at colleges and institutions does violate the 14th Amendment rights. Equal Protection Clause, which we all know since I've been saying it from the beginning. So I'm about to go after the U.S. Supreme Court decision, about to go over that right now. Which conservative Justice Clarence Thomas said, see the university admission policies for what they are. Rulerlessness, race-based preference. Those policies fly in the face of our colorblind Constitution. Justice Clarence Thomas also said, while I am painfully aware of the social and economic ravage which have befallen my race, all who are suffer discrimination, I endure hope that this country will live up to these principles that all men are equal, are created equal, I meant to say, are equal citizens and must be treated equally before the law. Now I'm about to get into John Roberts. Chief Judge John Roberts said, many universities have for too long concluded wrongfully that the touchstone of individuals' identity is not challenged best, skill built, or lesson learned, but the color of our skin, of their skin, that's what I meant to say. Also, he said, our constitutional history does not tolerate that choice. Now I'm about to get into Sonia Sotomayor. So liberal Justice Sotomayor said, today, this court stands in the way of rolling back decades of unprecedented and momentalist progress. Justice Selena Sotomayor also said, the court subvertly the constitutional guarantee of equal protection by further entrench racial inequality in education, the very foundation of our democratic government and pluralistic society. Now I'm about to go to the next judge. She's very popular, by the way. Liberal Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson said, we let them eat cake obliviously. Today, the majority pulled the ripcord and announced colorblindness for all by legal flag, by deeming color irrelevant in law. Does not make it so in life. Also, she said, no one benefit from ignorance. Now I'm about to get to Donald Trump. This is a great day for America. People with extraordinary ability and everything else necessary for success, including future greatness for our country, are finally being awarded. This is the ruling everyone was waiting and hoping for, and the result was amazing. And it will also keep us competitive with the rest of the world. Our greatest mind must be cherished, and that is wonderful day as brought. We are going back to all merit-based, and that's the way it should be. That's from Donald Trump from True Social. So here's Obama's take on this. Former U.S. President Barack Obama said, like any policy, affirmative action wasn't perfect, but it allowed generations of students like Michelle and me to prove we belong. Now it's up to all of us to give young people the opportunity that they deserve and help students everywhere benefit from new perspectives. Now I'm about to show you Michelle Obama, her statements. to former U.S. First Lady Michelle Obama said, "My heart breaks for every young people out there who wonder who their future holds and what kind of chance will be open to them." Now, here's Stephen A. Smith about to give his take on the Supreme Court decision. Just give me a second here. Come on up. Come on down. Yep, let it play.
Well, the Supreme Court has now ruled that it's illegal to consider race in college admissions. Now, most Americans agree with last week's decision. A recent CBS News poll found that 70% of Americans oppose race being used as a factor in admissions. And even 60% of Democrats oppose race as a factor, according to a New York Times poll. But there was a backlash to the ruling. My old friend Stephen A. Smith had a lot to say about the decision.
Here's where I get ticked off. I get ticked off that white America gets to sit back and act like they're innocent in all of the things that have been transpiring to the point where it ignited their furor to such a degree that they felt the need to oppose such things. The iniquities that have taken place in this country against minority communities, who exacted that? Who displayed that? Who exercised those actions? Who were the instigators and perpetrators of all of that? Who was that exactly? Wasn't that white America? I think it was.
Okay, not everybody feels like that if they're Caucasians. Okay? It's wrong. That's a Supreme Court decision. It's following the letter of the law of the 14th Amendment. He's wrong for that. Consider that's all white people. It wasn't all white people that talked about affirmative action was an issue. But I'm going to continue.
Stephen A. Smith, the host of the Stephen A. Smith Show and First Take on ESPN, joins us now. Stephen A., great to see you, man.
What's going on, buddy? How you doing, man?
You want me to just go right at that clip? Is that how we should do this? Should we just start right there?
Feel free.
Okay. There's no such thing.
Let's go. I'm here.
I know you are. The problem is, Stephen A., in truth, when it comes to justice, there is no such thing as Black America and white America. There are only individuals.
Okay.
And so when you assign culpability to individuals of the past, to individuals of today, there's simply nothing to hold anyone.
I'd get Will Kane a point for that. Letter of law is equal for everyone. Whoever want to be in America. Being America is a privilege. It's a right. There's no other nation on earth have the rights like we do. It's a land of the free. Let's continue.
Accountable for. Why do I pay the price for the sins of the past and you reap the benefits in the case of the affirmative action? I'm not saying you had affirmative action, but you as a black man would reap the benefits of affirmative action for the sins committed on someone of the past. We are only, in the end, Stephen A., individuals.
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, I get where you're coming from, and I can understand how you would look at it that way. You have to respect the fact that I have a different cultural background, a different experience than you, and I might feel a bit differently about it. What I would tell you is this. There's so many people, and the people that have been supportive of the Supreme Court's latest ruling are of the mindset that blacks were getting an unfair advantage.
Well, he actually grew up in poverty himself back in New York. I get kind of what his background is. I've been following the guy since the early 2000s. Let's continue.
What black people would contend to you is that it wasn't an unfair advantage. Remember, race was a consideration, one of many considerations that would be taken into the equation when you talk about college admissions. And I think ultimately diversity, equity, and inclusion is next, personally, when you think about some of the things that have been taking place in corporate America. But it wasn't that. It was an effort to sort of make an effort to even the playing scales to some degree because of the iniquities exacted against the African American community in this country. It wasn't about giving them an advantage. It was about highlighting the fact that they were discriminated, meaning we were discriminated against at that particular moment in time. And that's why the policy was instituted to begin with. So when folks are walking around acting as if there is a reason to celebrate, and I'm looking at folks that are feeling like somehow, some way, they've been shortchanged. My mentality is, wait a minute, the policies were implemented to begin with because the African American community was being shortchanged, and they were being denied.
Give him a point for that, which actually is true. Opened a lot of doors for a lot of people, including myself. I went to HBCU myself back in my 20s. I mean, that was a privilege. I also went to University of Whitewater. I had some experiences there too. I give him a point for that, though.
Denied the same privileges or the same opportunities that were accorded to white folks in America.
What I would say to that is you do not solve past discrimination by present or future discrimination. And there was certainly injustices under the banner of affirmative action inflicted upon individuals, whether or not they be white or Asian American. In Harvard, in the situation at Harvard, an African American student in the top 50% of his academic class, Stephen A., had just as good a chance as an Asian student or a white student in the top 10% of their class. Is that just discrimination?
No. And by the way, if you know, and I'm sure you did listen to my podcast, and I appreciate you doing so. If you recall, I did not say, you know what, I did not say that it wasn't discrimination. I acknowledged the fact you didn't hear me speak against, you know, anyone from the Asian community that had brought that case to the justices. I understood where they were coming from. My argument was against folks in white America that was saying, even the, you know, presidential candidate Donald Trump talking about now we get back to a merit, you know, a society based on merit, ignoring what brought affirmative action policies into play to begin with. We have people in white America acting as if they don't know how it came about.
Okay.
Give him kudos for that, though. Because that eliminated discrimination in the workplace and at schools. That did some good under the law, but it's still, I think we should never get rid of it. I think we should work on it. Because some people have racial biases. Still hear that to this day. Let's continue.
So if somebody from the Asian community or the Latino community, they had an issue and they felt that they were
refer to talking about individuals, whether or not they be white or Asian, can be the victims of injustice and discrimination. Okay. But I do want to ask you a sincere question. In the 1970s, when the program of affirmative action was implemented, Stephen A., at that time, the Supreme Court of the United States said there would be a day when it would no longer be required. When they re-upped it in 2003, they anticipated another 25 years of affirmative action. Well, we came just short of that. It's been 21 years since that decision was made at the Supreme Court. The question is, even if you're making up for past sins, Stephen A., when does it come to an end? When do we stop discriminating on the basis of race?
When people in positions of power have proven that they're exercising fairness, come hell or high water. It's really, really that simple. I'm so glad that you asked that question.
But that's
because
impossible
it is that
to
simple.
define.
Again, when you're looking at numbers, for example, why did Yale in the 70s sit up there and say, we want 10% of our student populace to be made up of minorities? You know why? Because they knew without those rules, those laws in place, they didn't anticipate that that would be allowed. In today's corporate America, you still have folks. You have black folks being paid less than white folks. You have black women being paid less than white women. You have white women, obviously.
That's not everywhere in America, Stephen A. It's not. Because people there's union contracts in certain places. People get paid equally at union companies. You must have say all that. To me, that's just bias. Let's continue.
obviously deserving a lot of opportunities that they obviously richly deserve. They're getting paid less than white men. Everywhere you turn, there's a level of unfairness that's being exercised.
But you're ascribing all those differences. The only thing that changes that is the law as opposed to somebody's conscience. But you're ascribing all those differences to race when there's so many different contributing factors into why corporate America may look a certain way. You and I both love sports. We both debated in sports. I could play turnabout as fair play and go, why aren't there more white NBA players? That must be discrimination. But we both know the answer is because merit has dictated who's in the NBA.
That's a good argument, though, which we'll be going into when it comes to the Rooney Rule. I give Will Kane a credit for that. I mean, if you're going to put certain positions based on race, you got to include merit, too. That's how players are picked in the NBA, if you're good or not. Let's continue.
And whatever's happening in society, and I would never, Stephen A., I would never sit here and say every decision made is purely based upon merit. But we aspire to that. We aspire to that.
Right.
And I think that the Supreme Court's decision has been a big leap forward in getting to where we judge things based upon merit.
Well, you would say that, and I would say to you that the power structure in the United States of America is still predominantly white. And so as a result, what white America is asking you to do is ultimately to trust.
Get him a point for that. Well, he's not lying. He's bringing statistics. I mean, hey, that's a fair argument. That's why the affirmative action was there in the first place. They even out the score, even out the balance. Let's continue.
That your heart is going to be in the right place. And there are a plethora of people throughout minority communities in this country who would challenge that and would say, no, we don't necessarily believe that to be the case, which is why we need the laws to help us. When you bring up sports, and you and I have argued back and forth as friends and brothers, talking about the world of sports and some of the iniquities that have taken place, you can bring up the NBA, for example. I can point to something called the meritocracy because I see their performance on the court just as much as you do. There isn't some curtain, there isn't some proverbial glass ceiling.
Yeah.
We're literally witnessing it. But when we look at the NFL, for example, the Rooney Rule was still in existence. This is the #1 professional sports league in this country. Why is the Rooney Rule still in existence? Because we've seen one opportunity after another where capable, qualified black individuals were bypassed because of the system that was in place, primarily run by white individuals who asked us to trust them, but then proved they weren't worthy of the trust that they requested. And so those are the kind of challenges we have to deal with as a country, and there's just no way around that. The only way we can make it better is people like yourself and myself talking about it honestly and openly.
I agree. And I will say that I think that the mistake that we often make, and where you and I find our debate, is whether or not we ascribe all those differences to the big factor being race. Listen, next time we're together, I want to have a conversation with you about Clarence Thomas. He's one of the most amazing black men in the history of the United States of America, and I do not feel like you're giving him sufficient credit to anyone. But we'll get there. We don't have to do it right now. Before we go, let's stay to many people in America. Before we go.
Yep, that's it for that one, though. Just give me a second here. Hang in there. Hang tight. Yep, just hold on. About to dive into the NFL Rooney Rule. Just give me a second here. Let's try and get set up. Hang tight, hang tight. Hang tight, hang tight. Do, 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 do. Do, 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 do. So the NFL Rooney Rule was named after Dan Rooney, former owner of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And 2003, the Workplace Diversity Committee wanted more minorities head coaches in the NFL. So the teams that had opening positions for head coaching must conduct one interview with minorities before selecting a new coach, which that was instituted in 2003. In 2009, the NFL made it mandatory that teams interview at least 2 minority candidates for their vacant GM positions and football executive positions. In 2020, the owners agreed on a plan that will reward teams who develop leadership skills of minorities as they become GMs or head coaches around the NFL. If a minority executive or coach leaves their previous teams but is employed by another team, then their previous team that the minority exec or coach will receive a third round. In 2021, the NFL made it mandatory that all 32 teams must interview at least 2 minority candidates for those vacant head coaches and GM and coordinator position. Also, teams must interview at least 1 female or 1 minority candidate for executive level positions. In 2022, the NFL made it mandatory that all 32 teams must interview at least 1 minority candidate for the quarterback coaching position. Now, the NFL classified women as minority candidates under the Rooney Rule, which I find that very So now, about to dive in here. American First Legal, which is a conservative legal group founded by Stephen Miller, now filed a civil rights complaint against the NFL. American First Legal think the Rooney Rule clearly violates Chapter 7 of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. The conservative legal group said the process is not only insulting and condescending to prospective coaches who are merely interviewed to check a box, but it also the exact kind of racial balancing that the Supreme Court of the United States have unequivocally dismounts as illegal and anthem to equal protection under the law. Yeah, that's quite interesting, though. It's kind of like, to me, when I read the cases throughout the this whole episode, pretty much talk about like quarters. Pretty much, it's almost a quarter system what they do in the NFL. I find it very sad, though. I mean, very few minorities took place back in 2020. I guess because of the interview. I guess past coaches became before them was not successful. We got to leave our biases to the side and go to a merit system. I mean, this is not helpful for anybody. But now I'm about to go over the Charlie Kirk controversy statements regarding affirmative action. Let's hold tight here. Hang in there. Ready to do this, man. I've been waiting for this moment for 3 weeks. Now I got my chance. So he made comments about like House Representative from Texas, Sheila Jackson Lee. When it comes to she was just picked because of affirmative action. Well, I'm gonna let you guys judge and see what you guys think.
To wonder, in fact, if we would have said 3 weeks ago, Blake, if we would have said that Joy Reid and Michelle Obama and Sheila Jackson Lee and Ketanji Brown Jackson were affirmative action picks, we would have been called the racist. But now they're coming out and they're saying it for us. They're coming out and they're saying, I'm only here because of affirmative action. Yeah, we know. You do not have the brain processing power to otherwise be taken really seriously. You don't have the brain power to take yourself seriously, man. You're 31 years old, got no degree. I'm serious.
This guy's a joke. Let's continue.
Go steal a white person's slot to go be taken somewhat seriously. Play cut 52.
But I rise today as a recipient of affirmative action, particularly in higher education. I may have been admitted on affirmative action, both in terms of being a woman and a woman of color, but I can declare that I did not graduate on affirmative action. This is my personal story.
I hear because of action affirmative. She can't even say that.
But guess what, Charlie? She made it. She made it to the Congress. She made it to the one of the best universities there is in the United States. I mean, what's your track record? Your track record is getting lucky to spill hatred throughout the world. Nobody needs this.
We know. It's very obvious to us that you were not smart enough to be able to get in on your own. I couldn't make it on my own, so I needed to take opportunities from someone more deserving. You know, this is how arrogant Joy Reid and Ketanji Brown Jackson and Michelle Obama and Sheila.
You couldn't make it on your own. Starting Turning Point USA, you needed a partner to do it at 18. You needed people to carry you. That's why you are what you are today. Worth almost $8 million in the last 12 years. You needed people. I'm sure you got some help too. That's just hypocritical what he had to say.
Jackson Lee are. They're so narcissistic, they think this is persuasive. They think we're like, oh, of course. That's why we need affirmative action, because you have impressed us with your brilliance. Of course. Oh, no. Imagine the world without Joy Reid.
You can't even formulate a good argument. Your arguments are horrible. Let's continue.
Imagine the world without Sheila Jackson Lee or Michelle Obama or Ketanji Brown Jackson. They think this is persuasive. They think as they kind of now reveal that I'm only here because of anti-white, anti-Asian forced discrimination policies that turned me into a bitter, resentful activist that hates white people, honestly, through our policies.
She does not hate white people. That's bias. That just shows a level of ignorance in America, man. Man, if he ever run for office, I don't think this man will survive a debate. That is my opinion. I'm going to go to the next clip just a second. Just hold on. Yep, this is a doozy right here.
AI story hits so hard because we've all been in the back of a plane when the turbulence hits or when you're flying through a storm and you're like, I'm so glad I saw the guy with the right stuff and the square jaw get into the cockpit before we took off, and I feel better now thinking about that.
No, I mean, like, you want to go thought crime? Like, I'm sorry, if I see a black pilot, I'm going to be like, boy, I hope he's qualified.
Well, that's the you wouldn't have done that. You wouldn't have done that before.
That's not an immediate.
No, you wouldn't have done that before.
That's not who I am.
Nothing happened, but I did it, and Israel therefore became the capital.
Hold on. Didn't catch that soon enough. I got more. Just give me a second. Just hold on. Just hang tight. Just give me a second here.
The other thing that you've been in the Twitter, whatever, universe, spin cycle is I think a very important conversation. It's kind of what I really want to unpack. I think that some of the things you've said recently about Martin Luther King are trying to open up the space for us to have a discussion about the 1964 Civil Rights Act and what that opened the door for. I think we all are in agreement that we needed to end segregation and Jim Crow laws, and black people needed full citizenship, to what degree the 1964 Civil Rights Act guaranteed that, I think we all agree that's great. But we have to have a discussion about how that Civil Rights Act is being used and piggybacked by the LGBTQ, same-sex marriage. Right. It's open.
Yeah, it's the rights for everybody, Whitlock. It's called civil rights. You're supposed to treat people with decency. But I get what they're trying to do, though. They're trying to promote Christian nationalism. I understand that. But let's continue.
Open the door for other things to be piggybacked on top of it that I don't think are good for America. And I think this is an important conversation that we have to have, and you've been participating in that conversation.
Well, yeah, thank you. It's an awfully provocative conversation I started. I stand by it, and I appreciate the opportunity. I mean this sincerely, Jason, to explain it. Because there's some people on the right that have been just throwing insults, and they would never have me on the show to explain it. So let me there was one poll.
They won't let you be on the show because you're ignorant, dude. That's why.
That prompted me to speak out about this, Jason. And I'm a Christian, and I love the Lord, and I know you do too. It's the most important thing in my life is when I saw a Gallup poll that Martin Luther King's approval rating was 96% and Jesus Christ's approval rating was 90%.
Yeah, check this out. I did the research myself yesterday. Okay? The polls are very inadequate. Why would you can't even take Gallup polls seriously. The most I looked at the status was 5,000 people participated. A lot of them probably was young people. Back in his days, back in the 1960s, he got a horrible approval rating. He got a lot to learn. He's 31 saying all this. You can't make this up. Let's continue.
I said, okay, we have a problem. I said, if a man who, of course, said some admirable and heroic things, but let's be honest, lived a colorful life, and I'll get into that, has a higher approval rating than Christ our Lord, now you...
That's because not a lot of people believe in Jesus Christ. You comparing two different polls, what he was doing. That's a horrible correlation. I can see him compare a person that's a political figure or a positive figure throughout the world, but that's totally inadequate. Because I saw like for people that believe in Jesus, it's only at 81%. That's what I saw yesterday. That's because we got a lot of non-believers. Nobody think MOK is Christ. Okay? Let's leave it at that.
You have my curiosity. I pair this with a series of shows, episodes, and also research studies we've done on our show, prompted by Christopher Caldwell's excellent book, Age of Entitlement, asking the question of what is the Civil Rights Act? What was it trying to solve and accomplish? How was it sold to the American people at the time? And how is it thought of now by the modern academic consensus? And the modern academic consensus, which now is pushing DEI and wokeism, they look at the Civil Rights Act and the Civil Rights era as a new American founding.
Of course, because everybody will just get discriminated against. Like I alluded to earlier. Certain groups can vote. Certain groups can share a water pump. Some people, you had to go to separate bathrooms. It is kind of like New America. It ain't been too long since we had the legislation passed. It's been over 60 years, man. That's not that long. Segregation been around for almost over 100 years or more. Let's continue.
And they look at MLK as the founder. They look at everything before was racist and bigoted and awful, including George Washington and Lincoln.
Yeah, it's true. It's in history books, man. Abraham Lincoln said in a quote, I'm going to say allegedly, though, just protect myself here. I saw in a quote, if he had a choice, he wouldn't flee black slaves. That's from Abraham Lincoln. When it comes to George Washington, he on slaves himself. He treated them wrong. But I do understand, though, they're the founders of the country and stuff, but at the same time, though, they both had character flaws. What I have to say.
And we refounded the country in a new regime with a new philosophy, dare we say, around anti-racism. And Martin Luther King is the unassailable figure that will then say this is new America. Now, understand at the time, of course, there were legislative priorities that needed to be done by the federal government to stop bitter segregation. I've always held that. But the Civil Rights Act went way further than that. And Christopher Caldwell's book talked about the American people thought they were getting minor legislative adjustments to say that segregation based on race is evil and wrong. In reality, what they got was the birthing of a permanent deep state of bureaucrats that were looking for racism where it didn't exist, eventually with a...
Yeah, those states of bureaucrats, they had to get involved. You had discrimination. You had segregation. It was like opportunity. Before the 1960s, minorities were getting paid very little dollars.
Affirmative action quotas and hiring practices expanded beyond race into LGBTQ type issues. And so what the civil rights era really birthed was this idea that it's the federal government's job not just to say that discrimination is wrong, but to actively go against any sort of disparate outcome and try to even the score under the guise of equity. Those are two different things, Jason. And most conservatives think of the Civil Rights Act and the promise of Martin Luther King in his beautiful statement. And I said this all along, it is a beautiful statement. I want America, I dream of a day where people are not...
I give a point for that, though. I mean, at least he acknowledged some things about Martin Luther King. Give him credit for that.
Judged based on the color of their skin, but the content of their character. I'm 100% bought into that. But that was not MLK's entire philosophy. In fact, after the Civil Rights Act was passed, after the Great Society was passed, after the Voting Rights Act was passed, Martin Luther King became more radical, talking about we need to restructure society, reconfigure society. We need to even, he almost said that he called for reparations. He didn't use that term, to be perfectly fair, but you could insinuate he talked about how we have not done a good enough job to have moral and economic justice.
Well, I mean, hey, he has a point there too. Some people feel like to this day, like the African Americans should get reparations because we were during slavery with our ancestors. That's a different topic for a different day. But I'm gonna continue reacting to his statements. Just give me a second here.
Safest, most opportunity-rich place on the planet for everybody, but for black people in particular. And so if their documents produce that fruit and the Civil Rights Act produced same-sex marriage, I got some questions about the Civil Rights Act. Should there have been some limiting principles installed in this?
Yes.
Let's have a conversation about the civil rights, and let's take Martin Luther King and anybody off a pedestal And let's just deal with their tree and what fruit did it produce, and we have to be man enough to have that discussion.
That's beautifully said, Jason. And if you go down to the details of the Civil Rights Act, what could have been achieved through prudent legislative action was actually ended up done is that there was about 1% or 2% of it, and it built this massive anti-racist federal bureaucracy that wasn't immediately felt, actually. But 10 years, 20 years later, all of a sudden we get these bureaucrats going after admission standards, and they say, well, you have to have affirmative action because they introduced disparate outcome, saying that, well, your outcomes aren't the same, therefore you're a racist institution. Like, no, we're not a racist institution. It just so happens that there's other factors. And of course, Thomas Sowell's amazing book, Discriminations and Disparity, or Disparity and Discrimination, is perfect on this.
Okay. Some of you guys don't know who Thomas Sowell is. He pretty much, he's a economics guy. He's not really a historian. But let's continue.
And we must understand that you cannot have the modern woke enforcement without the basis of the Civil Rights Act. Now, that's not to say that every part of the Civil Rights Act is awful and terrible, but all of a sudden, when you give the federal government power to police private business, to police private action, to come in, for example, with the EEOC, which is at times overreaching, at times can get into small businesses' private affairs, that could be a death sentence to a fledgling business that's trying to make it to operate right now. And then all of a sudden it's metamorphosized, and this is one that I think your audience will find into great agreement. Now all of a sudden the trans thing is under the Civil Rights Act. So that what was once, the intent was, hey, and I totally am sympathetic to this, that you have a black family that's driving on an expressway and the Natchez Trace.
Okay, if you do that though, it's still discrimination. Well, you can't have these surgeries. You can't be who you are. I mean, that's still discrimination, and it does violate the First Amendment rights. You can't. People got to express who they are. That's what pretty much the First Amendment is about. Okay, let's continue. Freedom of expression.
In Mississippi, and they're running out of gas, and the only gas stations are white owned and operated, and they say, yeah, sorry, blacks aren't allowed to get gas, and they have to pull over, and they're out of gas on the side of the Natchez Trace in central Mississippi, and they have to wait for a nice good Samaritan to pull over and give them gas. I don't want to live in that country. I think that a law that said, no, that black family has to be given gas is a good law. Let me be perfectly clear, okay? That could have been done without creating a massive, now multi-100,000 person basic standing army throughout all the federal bureaucracies that is beyond the idea of going after a couple states and a couple jurisdictions. And then the courts, and this is what's important, Jason, what the Civil Rights Act did because of the fanfare and because...
Yeah, pretty much what he's saying is, I think the government should stay out of people's business. Pretty much, as he a conservative, he believes in unlimited government, which I totally respect it. But let's continue.
Because of the celebration and because of how it's thought of, is that in most law schools, the Civil Rights Act is studied and revered more than the U.S. Constitution. That is a fact. It is studied and revered more than the Bill of Rights. It's not. It shouldn't be, meaning it's a law, okay? The Bill of Rights and the Constitution is the foundational laws of the land. The Civil Rights Act is cited more, it is used more. For example, not the Civil Rights Act, but its sister, the Voting Rights Act, is one of the reasons.
But it was necessary back in the 1960s. We had no rights. I'm serious. We had none. Somebody good conscience, like, look, we got to get these guys right. They're human beings as well as us. Let's continue.
Why we can't get voter ID and we get these goofy gerrymandered districts. And so much of the frustration that we see in our modern politics is because we have these foundational elements that actually none of us agreed to at the time. A majority of Americans wanted to see an end to segregation. They didn't want to see new segregation put forward eventually in anti-white hiring practices, affirmative action, or the entire federal bureaucracy having racial hiring quotas. And here's the most important thing, and I'm not saying it's because of this, but Black America was getting richer, they were getting stronger, and families were largely still put together before the Great Society, Voting Rights Act, and Civil Rights Act. 60 years later, Black America is in a worse position. I'm not saying it's because of the Civil Rights Act. I'm not saying it's because of the Voting Rights Act, but somewhere something went awry. And now we have more conversations about race. We have more fixations.
We starting to have more conversation about race when it came to Donald Trump, when it came to Steve Bannon, and it came to people like you talking about race. You had more. You bringing the conversation. Allegedly. Let's continue.
On race than any other time in my adult life. The promise was that we were going to get a colorblind America, and to offer an olive branch to some of my conservative friends that still lift up MLK. They want to lift up MLK because they want to turn the page on race. And I'm totally on that program. What I'm trying to counter is the reason we talk about race so much is because we have a federal holiday to a guy that talked about race all the time. We celebrate the Civil Rights Act more than the American founding, and that we have this continuation of multi-decades of building and building and building, where then in the 90s you get Derek Bell, an Intro to Critical Race Theory. You get Patrice Cullors in the 1619 Project, and eventually you look around and you have the left defending black-only dormitories at hundreds of universities across the country, black-only graduation ceremony.
Okay, Charlie. That's at HBCUs. I've been at other colleges. It had a balance of diversity. I don't know what ceremonies got a all black ceremony at these universities other than black colleges. Let's continue.
And they say, well, you're racist if you oppose these things. And you look back to the Civil Rights Act and you say, maybe we overreached and we built something we didn't intend, a federal leviathan in the form of anti-racism.
It's a conversation we have to have. I cannot, I'm gonna have to rewatch the show and take better notes on what you're saying, because I can't, I can't say that I agree with everything you just said there, but I can't say that I disagree with it either. But I know it's a conversation we have to have, because there's so many elements of truth in terms of what you're talking about as it relates to the Civil Rights Act. Basically taught, programmed black people to look at the federal government as your protector, provider, your partner in life. And it moved us away from men saying, nah.
Not all black people feel that way. Other races of people too, they need help. Rely on the government, because they had no other alternatives to go to. Let's continue.
I'm the protector, provider. My wife is my partner. My family is my partner. As a family, we're going to protect each other. And now we look to the federal government for that. And that's inappropriate from a biblical standpoint. It's inappropriate based on our Constitution and the values of our Constitution. The federal government was never supposed to be this unwieldy monstrosity that is nitpicking everybody around the country. And you know, yes. Again, you should be, if you want to blame somebody in America, the way that it was designed was you were supposed to be like, well, let me call my alderman or my city councilman. Let me call my mayor. Let me call my state senator. Let me call your governor. Those people that you can actually possibly run into at the grocery store. That's not some people far away in the, you know, in another part of the country, often DC, that ain't even a state. That's one. And then the other thing where I know you're on rock solid ground, and I hope people can understand this, but let's look at the LGBTQ movement, which was really just the LGB movement, I thought earlier, just the gay movement. They've added all the other letters because it's like, oh, well, we fought and we got gay marriage. And so the organizations that fought to get gay marriage, they don't just say, well, we got gay marriage, let's close shop and I'll get another career. What they do is they say, well, you know what? We got to promote transgenderism, send us more money and pay us, and we're going to make sure that transgenders get to play sports wherever they want, compete against girls if they want.
They got to fix that. I mean, I get it. They blowing that whole thing out of proportion. But let's continue.
Whatever bathroom they want. So now the gay movement has turned into the transgender movement, and I'm leaving out some steps along the way, but it's no different as it relates to DEI. If your company starts a DEI department, and
yep, I'm gonna explain to you guys what DEI stands for: diversity, inequity, and inclusion. That's what DEI stands for. Let's continue.
And let's say there's really not much discrimination going on in your company. The DEI person is not going to come into your office and say, well, you know, things are actually going really well here. No, what they're going to do is justify their position and go start hunting up. Well, you know what? There was some discrimination. A white guy on the job mispronounced LaShaquanda's name, and she thinks it's racist. And so I had to go have a meeting and walk him through how you pronounce LaShaquanda and boy, blah, blah. And that's what they do. And so they just run around trying to justify their existence. And now every university has these overpriced DEI executives and all of their underlings, and they're all just sitting out trying to justify. I'm gonna give you one example. I know I'm going long-winded, but I want the audience just to understand how it works. I have a very good friend who, top-notch athlete growing up, and I was he works at a university now, and I was at some event, a college athletic event with him, and he works in diversity, equity, inclusion. And this was a great masculine athlete, still is, great masculine athlete. But he said to me that, man, look at the cheerleading squad. There ain't no black girls on the cheerleading squad. And, you know, that's because the university didn't do a good enough job of telling the black kids that they could be cheerleaders. And I go, what did you just say, man? This dude was a great basketball player. And I'm telling you, he's one of my best friends in life. And he was a dog. And I was like, that's like saying, I'll make up the name of the coach that he played for. I was like, did Bobby Knight have to tell you, hey, there's a rebound available if you want to go get it, Jimbo? Or did you, as a dog, like, no, I'm going to go get that rebound? We should be teaching kids to go seize opportunities, go look for opportunities, not blame a university or everybody. Well, they didn't tell them that these opportunities.
And we all could agree on that. I mean, earn your keep and your stay. Whether it is position, whether it is at a school, whether it is at a job. Show what you're worth it. But I'm going to let it continue.
Is that how you got where you got as an athlete or in life? No, the people that make it in this world, they go out and take things, seize things. We got to give kids that mentality, not sit around in 2023 and pretend like black kids didn't know they could be cheerleaders unless white people told them they could be cheerleaders. That's a joke. But that's where we're at right now.
It is. And just to couple on, and I could go at great length, Jason. And again, thank you for the opportunity. I mean this sincerely, to allow me to make this argument, because it is a boundary pushing argument. And I wouldn't be doing this as forcefully as I am if I did not do hundreds of hours of research inspired by Christopher Caldwell's book. I want everyone to check it out, Age of Entitlement, where he goes through it and he says, hey, The 1960s changed America, whether we like it or not. It changed us sexually, it changed us religiously, it changed us politically, changed us economically, it changed us racially. And are we a better country because of the 1960s? And so it really started me on this track. And just to go where this is today.
Well, quite honestly, I think some of my grandparents will have to say, though, we are in a better place than it was back in the 60s. And they acknowledge that. At the end of the day, though, you still got to go out there and compete in the world. Otherwise, you can get left behind and nobody can feel sorry for you. Let's continue.
The EEOC, for example, which is a byproduct of the Civil Rights Act, is suing Tesla for not having enough immigrants. So it's not just race now. It's now foreigners that they are suing Tesla for having not enough non-Native Americans. That's the Civil Rights Act. In addition, the Civil Rights Act is used where they say, hey, if you are not just pronouncing people's names, but you might be having coded bias in your hiring practices. Now, it's easy and important to hate DEI, and I think we're building consensus on that. But the argument that I'm making is that the multi-decade incubator of DEI was housed in the Department of Justice post the Civil Rights Act. The attitude, the enforcement, the precision that the DEI bureaucrats operate with was all workshopped in the Department of Justice in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. And just now are we seeing it in corporate America, and we've seen this cancer metastasize. What started as a good intention.
I mean, here's my thing, though. What the Biden administration pretty much is trying to do is trying to have the workplaces make up as America. Not just have predominant race inferior. I'm trying to explain this a lot better. Trying to avoid racial dominance in the workplace. They're trying to have a balanced workplace. Let's continue.
To try to eradicate the injustices of saying that, only whites can eat at the restaurant has tragically metamorphosized into a beast that has even more hatred than some of the elements of the antebellum South.
Charlie, I'm going to let you go, but I want to say one final thing before I let you go. And it may be so explosive, you'll just have to duck and we'll talk about it another time. But I'm going to explain to you why MLK's immorality actually needs to be a part of this conversation. Because again, if your signature achievement is the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and there's an argument to be made that the alphabet mafia has piggybacked that and now is running roughshod over the country. That's where your sexuality, it comes into play. And I say this transparently. When I live,
I think people should keep their sexuality to themselves. I mean, that will help everything out. People don't got to express whether they straight, whether they homosexual. People just keep their stuff in-house. Let's continue.
Lived a much more immoral lifestyle. I was for more sexual liberation, more freedom. I used to tell people let the gays get married. And, and this is years ago. I let them get married, nothing you could do. And really that was to make my sexual promiscuity more acceptable or more like, I'm not really the problem. I just like to screw strippers. So I'm open to whatever anybody else wants to do, just leave me alone. And I have to legitimately ask the question. Was MLK's sexual immorality a part of the reason why this Civil Rights Act, and maybe he was unconcerned that the homosexuals would piggyback his piece of legislation. Maybe that's why there were no limiting principles ever thought about or put on this, because the real, he gets the credit, but there's a bunch of people that were involved in putting that together, and maybe they knew exactly where this was going to end up, and maybe they got their sexual picadillos and immorality, and that's why they crafted it this way. So I think it's a legitimate conversation. There should be no sacred cows in any of this. If you plant a tree and it produces poisonous fruit, we got to examine the tree, period, end of story, and we can't let our feelings get in the way of that.
If you have a higher approval rating than Jesus Christ, then I'm going to ask questions.
Again, to people that to take part of this polls, there's very few people. I'm sure not a lot of people feel that way, Charlie. Plus, some people don't believe in God, like me and you. Let's continue.
Perfect. Thank you, Charlie. Awesome.
Well, that's it for that one. I got more to show you. Just give me a second here. Let's hold on. Hang tight. So this is from Pastor Daryl Scott reacting to Charlie Kirk's controversial statements. Let this thing run.
And in saying that, there are those whites, such as Charlie Kirk. He's the ringleader, and he's actually trying to resurrect that spirit in the party of the superiority of whites over black. And he insinuates that every black person that you see in a prominent position, that there has to be an air of suspicion about them, like they didn't really earn this position. They were given this because of affirmative action. They were given this because of DEI. And it's absolutely not.
He actually gonna say it's not true. So I'm about to go to the next video with Pastor Daryl Scott with Rowan Martin reacting to his controversial statements. It's holding tight. Just give me a second, please. Yep, finna let it play. Let's give it. This might want to get your popcorn ready for this one.
You got Stephen Miller, that white nationalist, today sent a letter to the EEOC saying that the Rooney Rule in the NFL violates the 1964 Civil Rights Act. You got Ed Bloom attacking the Fearless Fund, trying to invoke the 1866 Civil Rights Act. So they're trying to use civil rights acts that were actually passed for black people now against black people, saying it discriminates against white people. Yeah, right. Then you got this little punk. I mean, one of the dumbest people, one of the most lightweight individuals you've ever seen, Charlie.
Have to agree with him there. I gotta agree with that man there for having dumb takes. Let's continue.
Kirk, college dropout, leaves Turning Point USA. A lot of racists have come through Turning Point USA. So their history is very well. So he's been attacking Dr. King. He goes on the show with Sambo himself, Jason Whitlock, as they trash Dr. King. And then Charlie has been going around talking about how we should not be able to, one of the greatest mistakes in history was the 1964 Civil Rights Act. And so my next guest, Pastor Daryl Scott, he has been on the warpath against this little punk. He's been sitting here blasting him. left and right. And he also revealed on social media the other day of a quite interesting story, a very interesting story that was stated in the White House. But before I played that, there's this just flat out racist named Nick Fuentes. He was the one who had lunch with Donald Trump and Mar-a-Lago with Kanye West. And so Nick Fuentes, I mean, just straight up, he's a racist. He's a racist. So he dropped this video praising Charlie Kirk and saying, welcome to the white supremacist club. Watch this.
Charlie Kirk, as we know, has become a white supremacist, and that
he's another dummy. Let's continue.
That's a huge victory, but he remains a Jew lover. he remains a Jew lover, and that I don't use language like that, you know. But he is an Israel shill. Like Charlie Kirk has become white nationalist, hardcore, but he remains a shill to the Jews in Israel, and I've said that for a long time. But if Posobiec is coming out swinging on both fronts, it's like, hey, if Turning Point would just stop banning Groypers from their conferences, maybe we could work together. If they would just stop bad-mouthing me and just reintegrate the Groypers into the machine, that would be a win for everybody.
This bobblehead is just ridiculous.
Let's give it a second.
And did you notice who
having
it
a
is?
commercial break here.
That's right, none other than the man who will make this country.
So, Pastor Darrell Scott, if a racist like Nick Fuentes is saying, "Hey, welcome to the club," sounds like all your criticism of Charlie Kirk been on point.
Hey man, first of all, let me say you got one fact wrong.
What's that?
He's not a college dropout. He's a junior college dropout.
Well, junior.
So you made it seem.
Junior colleges are no. Junior colleges are colleges, but technically, yes, you're correct. Go ahead.
Yeah. So basically, he has a high school diploma.
Well, but
we have to check. I don't know what his GPA was either.
Well, but it's no different than the person who he hired, Candace Owens, who also dropped out. So hey, they got something in common. But you've been going.
I got a new nickname for Candace Owens.
What's that?
DEI. Because she's a diversity hire, if there ever was a diversity hire.
Well,
she has no education. She does not have a degree in broadcast journalism. She did not take political science. She has no prior history of television experience, anything like that. But they gave her a job on the Daily Wire with a TV talk show. So I call her DEI. She's the poster child for diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Well, no, because
she only gave it to her because she's black.
Actually, people
try to tell that to her. She'll say otherwise.
People with DEI, they actually have real qualifications. She doesn't.
No, I'm going to put it this way then. Then I'm going to say what they say. They try to insinuate that people that are recipients of DEI are unqualified.
Right.
If anybody is a recipient, if anybody is unqualified, it's people like her.
Absolutely. First of all, control room, do this here. Alert: President Joe Biden plans on speaking from the diplomatic room at 7:45. So please be on the lookout for that live feed from the White House. That's in about 12 minutes. So please, let's look for that. The thing here is this here. You said something the other day. There was a meeting at the White House, and Charlie Kirk told Trump, "Just go ahead."
No, he didn't tell Trump.
So
we were in the Navy mess room, the cafeteria at the White House. It was myself, my business partner Kareem Lanier, and several other people were there. 2 other black people were there, and several white people. And we were discussing 2020 outreach to different demographics. And we talked about the evangelicals. We talked about suburban white women. We talked about gun owners. And then when it got to black people, Charlie Kirk said, "I think Trump should just tell black people anything. Just lie to them. He can say anything. It don't matter." My business partner reaches up. Can we cuss on this show?
Yeah. It's called.
My business partner said, "Man, that's the stupidest shit I ever heard in my life." Then I said, "Charlie, say something like that again, I'll knock the shit out of you, white boy." And so he turned red. I said, well, hey, I'm just saying. I said, don't you never say no stupid shit like that in front of me again. And we checked him real, real hard.
Yep. This like had to come into check down Charlie. They got to do nickname for him. Check down Charlie, allegedly. Let's continue.
But that showed me right there the content of his heart to even say something like that. Trump should just tell black people anything, lie to them. It don't matter. Just say anything. Well, no, Trump wasn't in the room when that happened. Trump was not there.
Well, I mean, it's kind of true. He did do some lying to black people, but
man, every politician lied to everybody.
Yeah, but you know, your boy lied a lot more than the whole.
What he lied about? That ain't the topic. We'll revisit this another day. Because I want to stay on Charlie Kirk's little punk. Punk Charlie Kirk.
Yeah, I don't want this to be Mark Fisher.
And I said you don't have much time because you're going to Joe. You're going to Dementia Joe.
I don't want this to be Mark Fisher 2.0. So I'm gonna save you today.
You don't want to smoke.
Now Daryl. Now you know dog.
Come on, you already know.
Doggone well. You know doggone well.
You don't want to smoke, but we ain't gonna go there now.
No doggone well.
We can do that another day. Let's not leave the deer to chase the rabbit. We are finally on. This is historic, man.
I'm just saying.
Me and you on the same side. Charlie Kirk is a racist piece of shit.
I got you.
Now we on the same side right here. This is historic, man.
I got you, because when I get done with you, you'll be a deacon. All right.
This black history. We are making black history right now. So Roland Martin and Dale Scott on the same side of the top.
So here's the question. You've been calling him out, but look, these conservatives, they're not going to stop going to his conferences. They're going to keep embracing him. And so is the Republican, are they going to cut taxes?
Yeah, they're not all like that, Roland. There's some good Republicans out there. Don't embrace their ideology. There's people from far right. There's people that are moderate Republicans. They're not adopt this whole principle. Let's continue.
Ties with Charlie Kirk because of his rampant racism, and it's very clear.
Let me say this. A number of high-ranking people in the Republican Party are definitely on my side in this conflict. And it's something that they feel is long overdue. Charlie Kirk, what he does, he says what he says unchallenged, and he'll wait a few days and it'll be a little bit of dust up on social media and he'll ignore it and let it go away. But I'm not the one. I'm not like that. That's not me. I'm sick of it. I'm sick of this shit. And so as a result, I don't plan on stopping anytime soon. See, here's the
I applaud you for that. I'm with you right there, man. You gotta stay your foot on his neck. Let's continue.
This is a money-making opportunity for him. You know and I know that right now in America, there is not a lot of hostile racial tension between blacks and whites. We're not rioting against each other. We're not picking at each other. We're not openly hostile. You know, people have their own personal feelings, but there's not a lot of racial tension. He probably made more of Black Lives Matter protests than Black Lives Matter does. Because when he says, I need to save America, in order to save America, I have to be the hero. For me to be a hero, there has to be a villain. So he hides his racism behind CRT, behind DEI, and he makes the black man be the villain. He's perpetuating this racial divide. He's making all white people look at black people with suspicion. And then Charlie can stop it. Charlie can save it if you give me money. And so it's all part of this hustle, but ain't nobody going for that bull crap.
Reese, you got a question? You want to ask a question?
Yes, Pastor Scott, respectfully, I'm curious, with the Republican Party's turn to naked white nationalism, is this speaking out against Charlie Kirk more about self-preservation for your role? Because as far as I understand, you're still on the Trump train for 2024, right? So obviously, if they don't need black people for Trump, if they have the Charlie Kirks and the Candace Owens, who is black, to be fair, and the Nick Fuentes that are gaining increasing power in the Republican Party.
All right, first of all, the Republican Party is not shifting to white nationalism. The majority of the Republican Party...
I said it's embracing naked white nationalism.
No, it's not. You know why? No, what's happening, I think I'm revealing to them some aspects that, or causing them to think in ways they didn't think before. See, once again, they're masking their racism behind political terms. And so they're making DEI an issue and they're making CRT an issue when it's reality, it's simple racism. Let me say this about the Nick Fuentes. I talked to President Trump about the Nick Fuentes issue. He didn't know that guy. Kanye called him from the car and was coming in to meet. He said, "Hey, can I bring my friend in?" And once he brought his friend in,
that's it for that video, though. Just give me a second, please. Well, that's a heck of a show. I'm about to check the polls right now as we speak, based on the topic. Is affirmative action really necessary? Just give me a second. So most of you said 75% said yes, it is necessary, and 25% said they're not sure. Well, I say the number on the screen. If you guys want to call in and give your opinion, head at it. Yeah, I ain't mean for a long show today, though. I mean, it had a lot to go over. Yeah, trying to see whoever's in still in the chat. All right, only 4 people voted, so I just gonna get my final thoughts there if I ain't getting a phone call or nothing. So here's my thoughts about affirmative action. I think it does need some working into it. Have a balanced workplace. I think it still need to do that. Like my grandparents always told me, if you're qualified, you should be recognized. Some people just wasn't getting recognized back in the 50s. That's why we end up in the situation we're in now. We never made it. People did not make it about race. It was the government that made it about race. So I'm kind of 50-50 though. I don't think it's fair for either side. I mean, both based on merits, but at the same time though, Stephen A. Smith did have a point though. That mostly whites overpopulate the population. That's why we had these rules. I mean, that was his opinion, and had to side with that one. Well, that's my final thoughts for the night. And about to head out. You guys have a good night.
Thanks for watching Greene on the other side.